Good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Scholl. I serve as the lead learner of the SCEA Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. We call ourselves COOL. And it's been a few weeks since we've had a live stream, so welcome back, everybody. And if you want to learn more about COOL, you can go to the COOL website right here. The COOL, just go to cool.us. That's CEWL. That's how we spell COOL. CEWL stands for Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. We've got all kinds of great resources on there, information about events that we have coming up. And we also have a lot of member-led content. So a lot of really cool things that our members, no pun intended, that our members are creating for you, for educators. And our mission is to improve the inner and outer lives of educators. And one of the ways we do that is through a series of live streams like the one tonight. Now, some of you know that I was recently in Floyd and I was promoting this. I was promoting Rehumanizing School. And if you haven't had a chance to see that yet, just go to the COOL website, look at the top navigation. The entire docuseries is now available for free. It's totally wide open. Everybody can watch it and share it. There's a preface episode, and then there's 4 main episodes. And then if you're interested beyond that, all of the raw, uncut interviews are there as well. In total, there's about close to 30 videos on the website. It's a docuseries about these 2 small schools in a small rural Appalachian town called Floyd, Virginia. And so I was up there for the premiere a little over a month ago. And we were up there doing the premiere. We had over 100 people show up. It was a really great experience. And I got to spend a few days in Floyd. Floyd is a small one-stop light town, but it's a really amazing community. I was walking around the park and I met this woman. Her name is Jahmi Burg. And she's written extensively and has researched this idea of focusing. And I didn't know much about it, but I wanted to learn more about it. So we got talking and she agreed to come on and talk to us more about it tonight, because it aligns with a lot of things like mindfulness and trauma-informed practices that I'm already really interested in. So I just want to read a little bit more about her. She's an educational consultant and author. She's a certified focusing coordinator. She's a neuroscience educator. Her first 2 life goals were being a mom and studying disease pathology, working as a medical technologist in hospitals. She's has relational skills, including interoception, and she's just a really helpful, kind, and friendly person. And I'm really excited to bring her on tonight. So without further ado, let's meet Jahmi Burg. Sandy, how are you doing tonight?
Great. What a nice intro.
Oh,
thank you.
It's good to see you again. Last time you was in the park in Floyd, and that was a really fun day with the puppets and the parades and the trashinistas and all that. It was a lot of fun. So it's good to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. Did I miss anything in your bio? Obviously, it was a brief bio, and I'm sure you've done a lot. Is there anything you'd like sort of the people watching tonight to know about you that we haven't shared yet?
No. Well, what I'd like to say is where my next edge is.
Okay.
Which is something we actually explore a lot in focusing. It's because we're learning these skills where we're, wanting to acknowledge how we are now, which frees us up to potentially, move and explore something new. And so my new edge happens to be, which is such a coincidence, this concept that focusing belongs in schools.
Yes.
And so I've written these stories. My original concept behind them was that by reading them, people who didn't have access to taking classes, but by reading them, you could kind of catch the skills because they are natural. These are, our natural relational skills.
Right.
Relationship with ourselves, and then be awareness of the world around us and relationship with other people. And so I have written 3 stories, and then I've for the last year or so been working on co-writing a facilitator guide to go with the stories, so that educators who work with groups already, which this could be adults or children, really, but anyone who's working in some, kind of relationship, either self or with other people type of skills, could use them. And so that's what I added.
Awesome. Thank you. So let's start with the title of this live stream. What is focusing? Can you give us an operational definition?
It's an experience, I'll say first. And one thing I want to add is that it's not, when you hear that word, you often think of the concept of people come up to me all the time saying, "Oh, I have such a foggy brain. I want to be able to focus."
Right.
And it's, that's one maybe aspect you might say, but it's really how we are being right now or living from our bodies, like awareness of that. So and when you're basically in relationship, so for instance, it's this idea. I'm going to go ahead and refer to that. And now the movie's escaping me. But there was a Pixar movie that kind of showed, that we're not home. If we're not home, and we basically have our sensory system communicating with us all the time, we have our thoughts, and we tend to think that we are those things. Like we'll say, "I'm sad."
Inside Out? Is that what you're?
Yeah, Inside Out is the movie.
Right.
Right. It's such a good depiction of that.
Yes.
But we say, "I'm sad," or we say, "I don't believe that," or we just, we are our thoughts or something. "I think this," when actually those are coming, from aspects of our brain or our body, and they're trying to report to control center.
Right.
And so the idea with focusing is it actually teaches you how to show up in your control center. And then that changes everything because there's a relationship.
Okay.
Because there's space between you and your, feelings. There's space for a response that can then include so much more. And there's in particular an aspect of focusing that makes it really valuable is this concept of the felt sense. So the philosopher who named focusing is Eugene Gendlin. He essentially did his work in the 50s and 60s with Carl Rogers. He's a philosopher, but he worked with the psychology field. And so this what he studied was how, what was it when a person went into counseling therapy session that, made the breakthrough. Was it a technique that the therapist did? Was it the therapist? Was it, yeah. And they actually discovered none of those. Like, not that some of those things can be helpful. Like certain people are like, "Oh, EMDR changed my life." Well, something about the environment that was created there allowed you then to access your focusing skills.
Right.
Is what I'll say. So essentially found out that it was something that the person was doing naturally inside of them.
Okay. Now, are you familiar with internal family systems? Is there any overlap here with, because when I was in therapy, we talked about the different parts, and I'm thinking that's when you were talking about Inside Out, and I'm thinking about the different parts and how we heal, those parts that need to be healed. Is there any overlap there? Any connection to that?
There's quite a bit of overlap, particularly there's a variety of ways to learn focusing. However, I studied something called inner relationship focusing, and it is very, very similar. Difference would be that we're very careful about not holding on to labels. So, for instance, rather than referring to something as our inner child, like, because that can grow up and integrate.
Right.
And judges, for instance, I've experienced, what you'd call an inner critic or judge,
Mhm.
essentially becoming my greatest cheerleader. So like coming in with a different kind of, when you work with them in relationship, and it really is the qualities you bring
Right.
to your, what we'll call your inner landscape.
Is there so one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about lately is Dr. Gabor Mate's work about authenticity and how wounding, the trauma that we experience and the wounding we experience kind of disconnects us from these authentic parts of ourselves, whether that happens in childhood or later on, whatever these events, whatever happens, unfolds in our lives, that disconnects us from that authenticity. And one of the things that one of the reasons why I created Rehumanizing School was because I feel like if we're going to really help young people and give them a proper experience in school, one of the things we should be doing is helping them connect with their authentic selves if they haven't already, or reconnect with their authentic selves to heal and to work on those wounds. But what I see happening often is that the schools actually, because of the way they're toxified through focusing on standardized testing and achievement and grading and ranking and competitiveness, that it actually creates a new form of, I don't know if trauma is the right word, but a new form of disconnection from the authentic self. Can you talk a little bit about that and why it's so important that this concept of focusing is brought into the schools for young people?
Okay, yeah, I'm going to bring I think the neuroscience would be uh, helpful here. And so that's one of the things I've done in the stories that I wrote. And actually, I'll be referring to those characters right now behind me.
Great.
So in any, let's just kind of go like in any given moment, uh, our bodies are, aware of our environment and taking all that information and feeding it up into our brain. And what's interesting is like 80% of the neurons are, going into our brain, are actually collecting that information. So it's a lot of information that comes in.
Right.
And that is all deciding, often unconsciously for us, whether we feel safe right now. And I know I've heard that. I think, it's a fairly common thing that teachers understand, that we want to create a safe environment for learning. But yeah, so that's coming in. And then what happens is we automatically will go over to our left hemisphere. So that comes in. And I want to comment. I actually, this is why I prefer the characters. The right hemisphere is located on the left side in some people. We're all wired slightly different, but it's fairly common that the right hemisphere is on the right side. And I have the character back there that represents it is the blue octopus. So that's
Okay.
this idea of hama and right. So we're really good at taking in our environment, and then we go over to the left, which is represented by the little human there. And this is where we store everything we've learned about being a human being so far. And so, a lot of that is accumulated before age 6, like particularly we're paying a whole lot of attention to that because our body wants to keep us safe. Our body wants us to thrive. And so everything works really hard to do that. But an interesting thing is, yes, over here, we're only comfortable with what we already know. And so, if we know about this situation, yeah, we'll basically, kind of act. And those are kind of patterns, all those patterns of like, yeah, how you brush your teeth, what you do when you get up in the morning, or how you comfort yourself. They're all just here. Um, And the huge thing, so so yeah, in essentially, if we want to do something different in any situation, we need to be actually coming back. And it's like a little bit of like living a little slower, which is where all the mindfulness fits in, and where a lot of, I
Right.
think, the environment that the therapist might create for you, or some of those techniques, like they're somehow slowing us down. I just think of a lot of the healing things, massage, anyway, they're slowing us down. And so then we're more likely to come back over here into our right hemisphere. And an important thing that I think focusing differentiates, that like you can come back over into your right hemisphere and just kind of merge with the sensory system, which is all fine. Like, oh, that feels so good to have someone touch me for a massage or something. However, in focusing, what we're actually wanting to do to create opportunities for neural rewiring is we want to come over there holding space for and being with what's all coming into our right hemisphere and what we already know about this situation. So, the present sensory information and what we already know about the situation. We want to be able to, like, have a family table here right now and say, oh, so what's happening here? Oh, and we're feeling this about that. And then over here, and what do we know, about these kind of situations? Yeah, they're hard for us. Uh, and and hearing that, and then making our decision. And we're also, what's huge, potentially open to something new.
Right.
And that's something new. So that's what, you know, when Jenlin saw people in the therapy, he saw they would come up themselves with something new that solved their problem. And that's the whole idea behind focusing, is this idea of our answers are within us. We have to slow down. We have to be able to get into a relationship, like I said, like create that space. And then, you know, essentially, there's a way I like to do it too. Like, however you treat, you know, or if you like look in the eye, or put your hand here to, something going on in your heart, and then you acknowledge a thought, you have looked those in the eye, and you are now in relationship, and they treat each other. So if you're saying to them, and this is a common thing I do in my stories, the third character is an owl who holds space, but it will say, we're in this together.
Okay.
And that applies then, if you think about that, like if you could start living from that, like where your heart and your lungs, you appreciate what they're doing for you now, and you also say, hey, maybe we could find a new way. Maybe there's a better way to pump and breathe together. And huge is, anytime we have a natural skill we're good at, like if we're good at sports, we're good at math, we're good at reading, we're good at riding bikes, we're good at crafting, whatever it is, we are almost for sure already linking both hemispheres together in a
Mhm.
cooperative way. That's
Right.
why things flow so well.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like a flow state.
Yeah, it's a flow state.
Right, right.
And essentially, what's amazing is you can just study the skills themselves, and you can bring more flow states into your life. Like,
But what I see schools doing, and I don't want to make clearer to delineate when I make this critique, that I'm not critiquing the teachers or even the administrators. It's really more the system, the way it's set up. So when I went to the day before I came to Floyd and went to Spring House and Blue Mountain, I was at a high school with over 2,000 students, and I go in. There's two security officers as metal detectors. They search my bag. There's security cameras everywhere. So immediately my nervous system registers
no wonder.
this lack of safety, right? So
Mhm.
I'm taking in all this sensory, input like you're talking about. And it's not really an environment where you're invited to slow down or where you're invited to feel safe, because the container itself doesn't look safe, it doesn't feel safe, and you've got 2,000 people in this one building, and we're not really getting outside, so we're not integrating with nature and aligning with the pace and slowness of nature. And so that's what I mean when I talk about the system and the schools being toxic. And then you go to a school like Springhouse, or you go to Blue Mountain, it's smaller, it's more intimate, it's safer. There's no security cameras, there's no bag searches, there's kids are outside, they're integrating with nature. And that's, to me, like, opens this opportunity up for us to actually do the kind of work that you're talking about with focusing. I'm not sure that can happen in the traditional environment, because it's like bell, they teach bell to bell. We've got to be like driving towards greater academic achievement. And when is there time for us to realign and to actually engage in the kind of integration that you're talking about between hemispheres? I'm not sure that happens very much.
It might not be happening. And if they really want to get those, state scores that they're going for, you need to. So this is the part where I really want to bring, it's the neuroscience. The neuroscience is key, because a child is not going to be able to take anything new in when they're in their left hemisphere, where they're piping out answers.
Right.
And that's too, you talked about with the trauma, I think I skipped over that a bit with Gabor Mate, but
Okay.
that's where those are our protectors. Those are layers. We have layers. Actually, both hemispheres can have layers of it, but huge is that literally, we're not going to learn. We have to be over in our right hemisphere, where we're curious, where we, and we're not going to be there unless we can create a sense of safety. Like, the nervous system has to be open and calm enough right now to take in something new.
Right.
Like you said, when you're in fight or flight or a stressful situation,
Mm-hmm.
you're navigating it. It's really difficult. You have to be quite good at these skills in order to also potentially do something new right now. Like and that's what, so again, let's
Right.
like, it's a win-win. Like,
Right.
I don't know, you want to do the skills, like,
Right. That's the weird thing, is that I think, if you just take time to help and you create the environment where kids can get in that flow state, I think you find that learning it takes place. It's just easier to learn. It's easier or perform or to do any type of task or skill is when you're in that flow state, rather than when you're worried about, oh my gosh, they searched my bag, so are there weapons in this school? Am I safe here? There's 30 kids in my class, and I'm not really getting the attention I need, or I feel like ostracized or bullied or whatever. I mean, there's so many things that could potentially hijack the nervous system to put you in even a mild state of stress or fight or flight, that really prevents that flow state. Like you said, it's just so hard to get in a flow state when you're stressed out, which is, we have kids across the state right now taking SC Ready, which is our standardized test. And just the pressures of that test alone are enough to hijack the nervous system. And then you get that test anxiety. Yelena, who you met, she had this question about, is this integration embodiment? I remember the first time she or somebody was saying, you have to be embodied. I'm like, I'm always in my body. What are you talking about? And I started to realize, okay, yeah, I'm in my head a lot. So can you talk a little bit about what it means to be embodied and how this connects to focusing?
Yeah. And first, I'll say it's interesting, actually, in the whole world of focusing too. I would say, what I've been talking about, that skill of learning how to kind of, be what I actually like to call it is your self mentor. Show up for yourself authentically as a self mentor, and you're then in relationship. And so that definitely then opens up all sorts of abilities for integration, particularly over our corpus callosum, which very interesting within the history of the evolution of the human brain. like this is an Ian McGilchrist's work. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but he goes back, like what he does is he kind of goes through history to kind of see how the brain evolves, like where one side will kind of expand and then that'll be like enough and we need to bring balance to the system. And then the other side will expand, and it correlates actually with the collapse of civilizations when one, so it's like really cool. And we're right now at this expansion of the left hemisphere, as you can kind of imagine, all the technology, you know, and so and also what's really weird right now is that, yeah, so the corpus callosum is smaller. Like they look all the way back to, you know, the beginning humans. It's smaller now than ever. So there's less connection between our hemispheres. Now let's look out at our world. Pause here for a moment. There's a lot of dividedness, isn't there? So like, okay. And then and so to the extent too, they say like for the average human brain, only 2% of each side is connected. So, you know, that probably attributes both to most of us our flow state. Would we say we're typically, you know, in a flow state about?
This reminds me a little bit. I don't know if you're familiar with Huxley's reducing valve idea.
No.
So Huxley talked about how he had this idea that as humans evolved, you know, this unified state that maybe with a large corpus callosum, you have a more unified brain, right? You have a more integrated brain, but that maybe as an adaptation, there's not an advantage to that because you're not as focused about going out and getting your resources and defending your resources and paying hyper focused attention on your environment. You're actually in that more unified state, or more that state of unity with, you know, the collapse of self and not self. And so if you're in that state, that may not have been an advantage for our ancestors in terms of their survival if you compared to other humans. So maybe that's, I don't know, I'm speculating here.
You're right.
But speculating,
Natural evolution, maybe.
it's reducing valve that the brain sort of stopped. You know, we have to actually meditate or really work to get in these flow states, or take psychedelics or whatever to get into these flow states, because we have this valve that's reduced our attention and our brain power down to just what we need to access to survive. And so we have to fight against that. And I don't know if that's true, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it essentially, you know, our brain it's that how you use it or lose it. You know, it's really how we choose to use our attention in any given moment. And, you know, we know, for instance, when we're, you know, disconnecting, you know, a lot of people do it by, you know, watching television or some kind of, you know, something to disconnect and just that, you know, I'm going to intentionally. And I think as long as you know you're choosing that, you know, that's
Right.
fine. It's when things become addictions that are not. Yeah. So how can we get the awareness? Because it's not until we have awareness that we can change it. But yeah. Yeah, and I guess I just want to go back to, again, I think, you know, the thing that I've really found, or a lot of us in focusing, I mean, I have people kind of come from all different, I mostly work, for instance, with, you know, therapists, body workers, coaches, you know, all that kind of thing. And this, you know, they will find more in focusing, but it's that step, it's that way you come back into your right hemisphere. Like you can come back and just kind of experience oneness, or again, like, you know, some kind of, you know, sensory pleasure right now. But that's really just going back to Hama, you know, which is fine if we want to do that. But if we can come back where we're actually a space, see, now there's space for something new and a new behavior. And that's where you know, that's what's going to save us right now. We need, so all these new ways, because some of the ways we've been doing aren't working.
Right.
And it's our children, it's I think they're closer, to being able to use their brain this way if we would just nurture it,
Absolutely.
and it won't take a lot, I don't think,
I
to
think
nurture
that's what I struggle with is, a lifetime of
the habits
reinforcing the neural pathways that are,
that you don't want to be using.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then having to really be intentional about cultivating that sense of oneness. It really requires, it's not a natural inclination because, I've been raised to, pay attention in school, do your work, get up, work hard, make money, pay your bills, get to work on time, all these like very task and agenda oriented, which I don't think either of us are saying, you just throw away your to-do
No.
list. But it's like, how do you integrate moments of oneness throughout your day instead of just saying, I got to wait till the weekend when I can do something I enjoy or for a vacation that's coming up? It's like, how can I build a life where I'm continuing to tap into that sense of wonder, that sense of awe, that flow state that you're referencing?
Yeah, so what comes right now, it feels like you're almost inviting us to go ahead and pause and, like, expand our awareness right now.
Let's do that. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and, yeah, so, a lot of it is let's go ahead and just check in with, for instance, the air on our skin. Is the air warm or cool? Is there a breeze or not? Um, yeah, and then there's this kind of becoming aware, of how gravity is always here. Oh, I love this one because um, when you feel into it, you can just kind of allow, like, you can have your bones just kind of the solidness of your body. Yeah, just meet, the solidness of, and always the earth is under us.
Mm,
And I often like to use this as an example. Always the earth is under us,
yeah.
giving us, you know, supporting us, but also giving us space to move around freely. And that's very similar to what we can create within ourselves. Like I like to say, space is your superpower.
Right.
Uh, yeah, and maybe, and so we haven't gotten quite here too. A key skill, and another thing is that our cultures and just the way we naturally use our body, based on again evolution, is we tend to be watching out for what could go wrong.
Right.
What's that, and instead, we can actually grow our neural pathways by be staying with longer things that feel good. And so, that's so one way you can really, do it now is like whenever something does feel good, stay with that longer. So for instance, when I walk through my garden, even though there's often something in these that says, "Oh, yeah, I'm in a hurry, I'm in a hurry." But
Yeah.
I stop right now, like the peonies are blooming right now. Oh my God, they smell amazing. And I always want to check out because the irises, each color
Yeah.
smells a little different. So I'm like, let's see if I can, you know, um, so so taking in, oh, and eating. Oh my gosh, that's a whole mindfulness thing, but
Yeah.
really the pleasure of eating and yeah, so it takes practice. And the interesting thing though, is sometimes there's unpleasant sensations that we're saying hello to right now. So there might be, something that hurts in your body, and we
Mm,
like to ignore that or push it away. But instead, in order for it to actually change, it needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be, so this is a whole kind of focusing concept. It needs to
mm,
be understood for why it is the way it is now. And then, and from you, which is what's so interesting too. Like, this is the interesting part about teaching these skills to children. I mean, you can feel a little bit better for a moment when an adult acknowledges or sees something in you, sees your truth, you know.
Right, right.
But in order for you to really, be empowered to grow yourself, you need to be doing those skills for yourself. So they need to be acknowledging to themselves, hello, tummy that hurts. No wonder because, I ran too fast after I ate or something like.
Mhm.
Oh, and so actually that's a quick thing that our left hemisphere might say because it experienced that before or something. And actually you have to check back because this tummy that hurts now might be more than that. See how we can so easily assume we know
Based
a
on prior
sensation,
experiences,
know
you're
a pain. Oh my gosh.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, it was really interesting what I'm taking notes. So one of the things you mentioned as an evolutionary thing as well. Now, this reducing valve, but also this idea of negativity bias, which Rick Hansen
Yeah.
talks a lot about in his books. So highly recommend Rick Hansen for those watching. Just he talks about this evolutionary adaptation to be hyper vigilant. It was definitely an advantage to be able to remember what went wrong and imagine what could go
Mhm.
wrong and be focused on everything in your environment that is wrong. That's great for survival. And what I see as inheriting that from my ancestors. I see that any little thing, even small things in my life, that becomes the primary focus of my consciousness. It's right here in my face, even if it's something small. When there's 10 beautiful things around me to notice, like the birds at my bird feeder, or like you said, the flowers blooming, or there's blue skies right now, the temperature's nice, or there's wonderful things happening in my life, and even wonderful things to think about. But I'm sitting here internally focused on the one aspect that's wrong. And I hear you saying, don't be in denial of that, but don't become a permanent visitor to that
To
place.
that.
Orient
Yeah.
orient to the other things that are all there.
And so that's how we could really, I think this is actually maybe an easier place for teachers to start with in a classroom rather than if you're not that comfortable helping, children with deeper emotional trauma and stuff. This idea of making sure that every child has a positive resource in the room, something that they choose that when they feel challenged or frustrated or like stuck,
Hmm.
they can look at that or touch it, whatever they need, uh, and feel comforted.
Yeah.
Like, and it'll just always be there. Um, that's huge, I think, to have our resources around us, to make sure our environment has, things that we can kind of calm ourselves
Mhm.
with. Uh,
Yeah, and I think this is true for teachers too. Teachers should have those things. And also, one of the things that I didn't figure out until about my fifth or sixth year of teaching was I noticed myself getting in the habit of orienting towards or focusing on the misbehaviors and addressing those
oh yeah,
rather than
so easy.
focusing on the positive behaviors and reinforcing. Like,
Isn't that?
so
Yeah,
I flipped it,
grow them where you want them to go.
just flipped it and said, John, thanks so much for sitting down and starting your work. I can tell that you're working really hard on this. Instead of, Jimmy, why aren't you sitting down and doing why aren't you doing the work yet? I told you 10 times, do the work. Like, as soon as I started flipping that around, classroom management, I mean, it was never perfect, but it was
Mhm.
just so much lighter and easier. And the environment in the classroom was much more positive because the lead person here is
Yeah.
is is orienting towards the positive. So that's modeling to these kids to orient towards what's right.
And so an interesting thing about this is you had to first be able to see what was good in yourself
Mm,
or basically, yeah, to the extent that you can experience that for yourself, that's the extent that you can bring it outside of you. And so this is a whole aspect I love about focusing too. Like we work, it's grounded in self-awareness.
Mm.
And we build relational skills, like our body is your best teacher. And you know when you've had to sit with some stubborn something inside yourself, and then it finally turns around and gives you a hug.
Yeah, right.
For people who have imagery inside, like that's like, oh my gosh, and yeah, so it's but it's true. It's essentially, we can't bring resources to our environment that we can't find within
Yes,
ourselves.
and that's what I've been trying to, for years, we've been trying to explain that to school leaders that, you want to bring social emotional learning to your kids, or mindfulness, or, trauma informed practices to your kids. And it's like, it can't get there until the adults in the building
Yeah.
have it for themselves, because it's like the metaphor that people have used, and so this isn't original, but the metaphor is like, you're wanting the teacher to teach the kids how to swim, and they've never been in the pool. Like they have to get in the pool, they have to become swimmers first and learn how to keep their heads above water, and then once they're expert swimmers, then they can help these other kids get into the water. But that's where we are with education right now, is they are seen, that the educators are seen as, no, your job is to prepare these kids for this test and to keep them all in line. And it's like, to that end, it's like we'll adopt mindfulness as a tool for compliance, in that, as a tool for behavioral management, but not as a tool for transformation within the teacher, so that the culture transforms. And that's that we've got to reverse that. We've got to not look at these tools, whether it's focusing or mindfulness or trauma informed practices, as something that it's just going to help us maintain the system better, help us get kids ready for the test better, because they'll be more focused and disciplined and mindful and behaved. Like, that type of mindset is what has allowed this stuff to get into schools, but then it's misappropriated. And then it gets then the teachers get a bad taste for it, because they start to see through that. The students don't like it because they're seeing through it, like, you're just trying to control me. This is where we have to get back to doing it with authenticity, doing it in a real way that really heals educators, so that they can help students heal.
Yeah. And as you say that, you're reminding me, I think I mentioned to you, I kind of wanted to come in with something about one of the key aspects of focusing, which we call life forward flow, or life forward energy, or movement.
Mm,
And because, yeah, and it's kind of, it's grounded in trust in ourselves as evolving beings, and that evolution, when we really welcome evolution, that we're always moving toward our well-being. Like, it'll take a step, like whatever
mm,
happens, because it is key. um, I, I'm going to go ahead and I did one thing I did bring was some quotes from
great.
Jean Genlin about this concept of life forward movement. So I'll just say here,
Please.
yeah, what he says is, what that edge needs to produce the steps is only some kind of unintrusive contact or company. If you will go there with your awareness and stay there or return there, that is all it needs. It will do all the rest for you. And so
Mm,
essentially, like, and again, this is us
mhm.
turning around how we think of ourselves. Like, um, essentially, when you actually go inside, everything you encounter wants your well-being. And it initially might be doing something that seems, you know, hmm, like it's getting in your way, like,
Right.
eh, however, it's always doing that for some reason. And when you can help it feel like, again, sometimes these come with memories, of why there was some point in your childhood where you made some, I remember making these. I remember some voice in me saying, I'm never going to let that happen again.
Right.
But when we limit ourselves like that, we limit ourselves
Yeah.
in ways that affect all sorts of other things, because we start closing down and not
Yeah.
participating in places we could
Close that
potentially
circle.
grow.
That's what I've talked to people. Alex mentioned that he took your course and helped him heal anxiety, and he wants us to talk a little bit about
Okay.
working with fear and anxiety, and that's something I've had to deal with myself. And one of the things that I noticed is my initial strategy for dealing with my anxiety was to make my circle tighter. So in other words, any
Yeah.
experience that I had that triggered the anxiety, I was okay. I just have to avoid that. I can't go there. I can't talk to this person. Can't do that. Can't listen to this. Can't, and you tighten that circle. And before long, you have this extremely tight circle, and it's super easy to get to trigger your anxiety because the circle of your comfort zone is so tight. And what I noticed was that I had to have the courage, and I don't know if this is what you're getting at with the
Yes.
talk of the edge, is kind of getting to the edge of that circle, not necessarily jumping 20 feet beyond it, but getting to that edge of that circle so that you can start to push back on that, expand it. So now you have this wide circle where it's your resiliency and your window of tolerance is just much wider. And that seems to have worked for me. And there's times in my life where it tightens back up and times where it widens again. But you talk a little bit about, Alex said that you were extremely helpful. So maybe you have some ideas you want to share about that.
Yeah. So huge with anxiety is to kind of, so there's anxiety in me, uh, is to kind of imagine being near someone who's anxious. And so just kind of like you said, so for instance, I'm coming to my mind, I can picture a period where my daughter struggled with anxiety. And yeah, she would just be so like
Hmm.
rigid.
Right.
And and also I could hear like really criticizing herself. Like so then it just would go kind of
Hmm.
down. Because
Right.
once first you've got this something in you that's afraid right
Yeah.
now, and then you've got the something that's criticizing it for being afraid.
Hmm.
Okay, and we have to be able to step back from both.
Right.
Yeah, we can't. And also, and we have to do it in a way where we're not criticizing the critic,
Yeah.
which
It's
which
really,
is a real problem actually.
yeah.
um,
I do that all the time. Like,
yeah, I love how you laughed. I could
doing all
tell.
right. I'm doing it right now. Yeah. Yeah.
um, uh, yeah, and so it's this very interesting uh, spatial awareness. And so I actually my experience is that we learn how to create more space. And so one thing you have to do too. So to both of these things, you acknowledge them and you let them know, like, you're not trying to change them. It's
Hmm.
okay. The anxiety is here. It's okay. Something is criticizing it. However, so you do have these ground rules inside that everything is safe to be the way it is and that you treat everything with kindness. And so it's interesting because lots of times people have trouble with that safe to be the way it is. Well, I don't want a critic to be safe to be the way it is. Well, but you are clear. So if this that's being criticized is safe to be
Right.
the way it is, then that behavior has to stop. And you do it by, you look the critic in the eye and hear its complaints.
Yeah.
And you have to have the courage to hear them and say, you know, I understand you might have come to believe that. And I'm standing up. Here saying, I'm a living being. I am capable of change. I'm a living process. That's actually
Right.
with the neuroscience I have, there's like the right hemisphere is being energy, the left hemisphere is doing energy, but the us as self mentor, this owl, this is being with and I am living process. So that's a real other cute. This is where you can catch yourself and kind of see who's here right now. So Hama, the right hemisphere will say, I am a body. I'm hurting. I'm sad. You know,
Mhm.
it's like I am a body.
Personal identity.
Yeah. And whereas the left hemisphere sleuthin, that's my little human, will say, I have a body. Now let's all just pause here a moment. And this is what happens too with the anxiety. We're often like, I have anxiety and I want it to go away.
Right, right,
And uh, so we're coming from a perspective there, and it might not be a direct inner critic, but it's something trying to very hard make it go away. And so I have a body is often how we approach all of our medical problems. We just try to fix them,
right.
and that's like kind of sad if we haven't listened to the body, at least get its perspective.
Right.
You can actually, I mean, if you get good at these skills, it's so interesting. You can, oh my gosh, some people, everyone's process is different, but they can tell exactly like where in their body and,
Right.
what it looks like. And, and we have like invitations where you can invite it to express itself as an animal, to kind of try to understand it better. Because, you know, sometimes our body, what's going on somewhere, like, uh, can be hard because, of course, we're afraid too. So
Right.
you
So,
have the fear again, that fear of I have a body. Um,
right. When I've had anxiety, and I think a lot of times this is the normal response. Like people have anxiety, they want it to go away. So what makes it go away? Not like, can I sit with it and be curious about it without judgment and really tune into why it's happening, what's going on inside me, what's making me anxious. It's just like, no, let me just get a drink, let me take a Xanax, or let
yeah,
me whatever I need to do to numb it out, have sex, or whatever it is to numb that. Um, I think that it's like you're bypassing the potential for real healing there. And I think that's what you're getting at also with like some of these things that happen with our bodies. It's like we just want an immediate fix. We just want the pill, the certain whatever it is, we want the fix without really listening to what's going on inside us. And that's a really powerful point.
it's it's huge. And I mean, we've all heard stories, where like people heal themselves of cancer or something, like it just kind of goes away. Well, I promise you, those are natural focusing skills at work. So yeah, and so I see, yeah, so acceptance, right, Alex? Yeah, so it is acceptance, and you can actually feel something relax, like the anxiety, right away will relax just when you accept it. And what are we accepting? We're accepting that we're human beings and we're not perfect right now.
Right.
Oh my gosh, like there's just something all the time. Like too, we have this. Uh, who came up with this idea that we're supposed to feel good all the time? So let me come back to again, kind of with the owl, and also with this whole. We've got the two hemispheres, so you've got two perspectives. Essentially, the better you get at these skills and at like being your own self mentor, you're getting better and better. My arms are going out really wide. You can't quite see. um, at holding greater paradox.
Yes.
Paradox that,
Mm.
because I've had some rough times the last few months and some challenges and stuff. Or actually, I'll give a good example. A couple years ago, I had shingles,
Mm.
and I chose not to do anything. And let me tell you, there were a couple weeks where, I mean, not to medicate it. So I'm saying,
Right, right.
and there were a couple weeks where it was challenging in the nighttime to get more than 45 minutes of sleep.
Mm.
And um,
Mm.
but I welcomed it for building resiliency, uh, and uh, and I really came to, for instance, I came to experience what full like exhaustion, sleep exhaustion and how different your brain changes. And I wanted those experiences. It's helped me understand, you know, clients that come to me more.
Mm.
Uh, I also practice for instance, the cold water therapy. Maybe
Yes,
you've
yes. Mhm,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Awful. Mhm.
I love it. Makes me feel alive.
Does.
Uh,
It does. It really does.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so so this idea of holding more, and actually, I saw, yeah, Heather brought up the idea of anger, so that would be a good example too. Our society, like, anger is not okay.
Right.
And it's such an interesting thing when dealing with anger because to me, it's like, so if you're standing near someone that's angry, to me, like the first thing is they need space. Like
Mhm.
you don't want to walk up to them and touch them because chances are good they're gonna do this right now. you
Yeah.
know. Instead, you want, but you don't also want to abandon them because there's always the be with.
Right.
Let them know I'm here. And so there's something about um, acceptance and then helping them find a way to move because anger in your body is an energy that needs to get out
Right.
somehow.
Right.
And so we need to find a safe way to move.
Mm.
It's just so you know kind of common sense. Um, when you start putting everything in, like, relationally, like how could I be with this right now, to let it know I'm here, also to kind of have boundaries, for instance, like anger, again, like I said, everything's safe, like I'm going to be safe from your anger. uh, so that's a clear boundary you're setting too, like, if you feel like in order to accept the anger you need to step back, you should step back.
Yeah.
And you can do that within yourself too. Like if you come across something that's really hard to be with right now, to admit about yourself, or seems hard, just pull yourself back a little
Yeah.
without exiling it. you know Pull
Right.
yourself back till you can feel like, okay, I see you now, and you're way out there, and
Yeah.
I'll be able to become more comfortable over time.
That's one of the things I've been playing with lately is as part of like healing is I lost my mother a year ago. It was almost a little over a year ago. And I think at first I was so busy with all the stuff that you have to do when a loved one passes, the wills and the probate and all this stuff, I was so busy. And um, I think I used that busyness as a way of avoiding dealing with the grief. And then all of a sudden the grief comes up and I'm kind of like, where is this coming from? Right? Where is this coming
Mhm.
from? And my friend Yelena talks about titrating into that pain. It's like, can I allow myself, and I did on Mother's Day, allowed myself to tap into that pain for a short period of time. I didn't stay there, all day,
Mhm.
but I tapped into that pain because I think it helps to allow yourself to feel that and to heal little pieces at a time. At least that's been my experience. It's kind of like allow yourself to go into that. There's a show called Shrinking that talked about that. Just like listen to music, allow yourself to cry, just get that 15 to 20 minutes of just let yourself feel
Yeah.
and and then come out and then carry water, chop wood and carry water and do the things you need to do in your life. But I think so many of us just avoid that because I don't want to feel it at all. And this whole thing with anxiety to me is, Alex mentioned this. It's like, and you mentioned this, it's really about allowing yourself to feel that without judgment and without thinking, I'm broken, nobody else is like this, I'm crazy, other people aren't having to deal with this. How long is this going to last? Why can't I get this together? Like you said, there's supposedly this timeline that I'm supposed to be on to heal this or to not feel this anymore. And the more I grip that and cling to this notion that it's got to be gone and I've got to figure it out, the tighter the anxiety tends to get. So it's like the allowing this to loosen up. The greatest metaphor I ever heard was those little finger traps. And it's like the more you pull on it, the more you're trapped. So if you really want to get out of that finger trap, you gotta stop pulling. So that was the greatest advice for anxiety that I ever got, is just to be in the trap. And then,
Yeah.
you know,
Be okay to be anxious right now.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, oh my gosh. I just listening to you, I just, so I mean, like, and I know there are, there's more and more communities that are becoming like this, but that is one of the things that I like about focusing too, which is interesting. It's grounded in it, at least, I mean, I'm looking for exactly how to help it, come to schools, but it's grounded in relationship and companions. So finding listening companions and learning how, you know, besides as you develop it for yourself, how can you be a companion for someone else right now who's struggling? So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that whole thing, like if you had, if you were at school and there was, and there are children who are natural like this, like they naturally, maybe one or two per class or something, but they're naturally empathic and they'll go to the one who's struggling.
Right.
Like
Right.
they'll actually go and, naturally want to, but it can be too, they may have learned to try to fix them, um, from our culture, but
Right.
really what they need is just a friend to hold your hand.
Yeah. Just holding
I
space.
mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
Like, you're okay that you're anxious. I still wanna sit next to you,
Right.
even though you're tight as a you
No,
know?
what's wrong with him?
Yeah, but for someone to sit next to you,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, and, this stuff, I think it's so old, but it's coming up for a lot of us. This, these, um, there's something in us kind of always monitoring what it thinks other people
Yes.
think of us. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh
Of course.
god.
Yeah.
That's still one of my,
Yeah, and
um,
when I'm have anxiety and I have to go into public, the last thing I feel like I've got to figure out how not to get off these nonverbals that I'm anxious. So I've got to, hey, you're like, I'm fine,
yeah, just,
and so you're giving off all these nonverbals, but like underneath it all, you're feeling it, and that makes it even more uncomfortable. And it's like we have to learn how in our schools with teachers who are going through crisis, we tell them you're not allowed to bring that. You have to check that at the door. Your humanities checked at the door. If you've got, if you're depressed about something or anxious about something, just table that, the moment you walk into the building, and then you can pick it up on your, after you leave. But your responsibility is to be there for the kids and to teach them bell to bell, and, put your personal problems behind you. And it's so dehumanizing. And it's such a bad example for the kids, because so many of our kids are going through something like that and they feel like they need to hide it because not all the adults are hiding it, and
yeah,
nobody's there's no space it, within the context of a school day. There's very little space, I should say, in a traditional school for us to be humans and to allow for that. And like you said, just to not to fix each other, but just even acknowledge that this is in the room and we can be with this person and um, help them as they move through it. I just, it's,
yeah,
and seeing that in Springhouse and seeing that in Blue Mountain, seeing those spaces where that happens for people. And it's just like, and for kids and teachers, and it's like every teacher and student deserves that. And we've got to stop clinging to these models that we have and worrying about the test, because it's preventing us from healing and tapping back into those authentic parts of ourselves that we need to flourish and to be well. I want to. I'm sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there.
no, no, yeah,
I
that's
want
good.
to. We're running out of time. We're over
Yes.
time. I do want to give you the opportunity to promote your website, your books, and all of that before we hop off. So for those, there's been lots of people watching. So can you go ahead and just share how folks can get in touch with you? How can they buy your books, go into your trainings, and all that?
Uh, yeah, so my website is learnfocusing.org.
Okay.
And yeah, there's a lot of options there. There's you can do individual sessions, like to kind of get clear on the experience. And I tend to do a lot of teaching the way I organize those. There are courses. The courses, it's generally, it's called Creating Space for Lasting Change. And it's basic focusing skills that generally, if you take all four, they're divided, but if you take all four, it takes 15 to 18 months.
Okay.
And that, but I have a goal as you come out of there of that you will be able to kind of find, figure out where you are in your brain right now and be able to shift yourself to the bigger perspective, like shift yourself to holding space for yourself, like, to do that. And yeah, and then I also I mentor a lot right now. I have a learning community for mastery and guiding change. And so those are advanced students who are becoming certified to teach focusing themselves. And then and then we also have interactive focusing, which is, I have a partner, Barbara, who's offering that. And so both her and myself are offering free monthly programs. She's offering this interactive changes group, which it's a place where you can come without any experience, and you'll learn a little bit about focusing, and then also either practice with her, if you're brand new, or with someone very experienced. You'll actually get to have an experience.
Okay.
Those were started, changes meetings were started way back by Eugene Genlin at the University of Chicago. So it's really cool. We're still running them. And then mine is actually called Smart View Conversations, and it's a 1-hour space for where I'm actually using the stories, and then we're doing an exercise based on them. And then I'm also offering, they're starting in the summer, educator support. So I am opening up a space. It's brief. Myself and the teacher who's co-writing the facilitator curriculum. We've got it set on Mondays, I think 4:30 to 5 Eastern time. So it'd be a little hard if you're, but it's great for South Carolina. And we just want to hear what you need, because that's what I basically have all these students coming, becoming we can all develop products, all sorts of, or whatever. What is it you need? And so that, and then I have developer support for the ones who are creating, and then the stories are available right now on Amazon. I'm going to have PDFs of them available probably, by the end of the summer. It could actually happen anyway, maybe July, on my website, so that, because teachers, I think the PDF copy is often more what they want.
Yeah. So they can go to learnfocusing.org and they can find all of that, your training, and the books on there as well.
Yeah, and I have audiobooks, and it's basically, I've got things down the pipeline. Eventually, I actually, want to have characters. That takes funding, so we'll see. I'm a one-person show.
Yeah. Well, it's great talking to you tonight, Sandy. I appreciate you taking so much time out of your evening. It's really great to meet you in the follow-up. I'm glad we had a chance to do this, and it sounds to me like we need to have a part 2 at some point. So hopefully you'll be willing to do that down the road. But and if I come back to Floyd, hopefully we'll have
let's meet up for sure. And I want to come back to the embodiment thing that Ilana brought up. We never did really touch on that, so we can do that next time. I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay. All right.
All
right. Thank you so much, Sandy.
Okay.
Have a great night. All right. Bye. That's Sandy Jahmi Burg. You can learn more about Sandy's work on our website at learnfocusing.org. A couple of things I want to promote before we sign off. First of all, coming up next week on the 29th, we'll have Rona Neely and Kiana Brown. We're going to be talking about healing trauma. If you have not heard Rona speak, she is one of the greatest speakers I've ever heard in my life, and she's right here in South Carolina. And her daughter, Kiana Brown, is a telemedicine behavioral health clinician who's going to be tying in some conceptual knowledge around trauma a very powerful evening next, I think this is next Wednesday at 7:30. Please make sure you tune in the same place you're tuning in tonight. Along those same lines, if you'd like to dive deeper into trauma-informed education, we're going to have a workshop on July 11th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the SCEA headquarters. Karen Beeman and Jennifer Dollar from Columbia College, they are the leaders of their Masters in Trauma-Informed Education. They'll be there. Rona will be there. I'll be there. And you'll receive a certificate for 4 hours of certification credits, also a free lunch. It's free for members. It's $40 for non-members. So if you're even thinking about joining, you should do that now. You should definitely join now during our early enrollment. Also want to remind you of our Educator Health and Wellness Day. We're collaborating with Veronica Primus's Circle of Rest and Columbia College to give you a day of health and wellness. They're going to do massages. We're going to learn about nutrition. I'll be leading some yoga sessions. Yelena Popovich will be there to do mindfulness. You can register at circleofrest.org. That's rest with an E on the end of it. You can see at the bottom of the screen there, circleofrest.org. Also something we just launched this past week is Cool Yoga. Alex Del Castillo is a teacher here in Horry County. He's also a member of the SCEA, and he does a weekly yoga series now. It's just a basic beginner's yoga series. You can find that on the Cool website at cool.us. He's also posting this on Instagram and TikTok, so you can follow the SCEA over there and check out these cool yoga sessions. These are free yoga sessions, and he's a really, really great yoga instructor. And the last thing I want to mention is Rehumanizing School. If you have not had a chance to watch that yet, this is a docuseries I created about the schools that I mentioned during this live stream. It's meant to just spark conversations about school culture and about how we can move towards a more humanized system that benefits our teachers and their students. So if you're interested in that, go to the Cool website, look at the top navigation for Rehumanizing School. I want to thank everybody who tuned in tonight. We had Heather and Alex and Penelope and Yelena. I also want to, again, thank Sandy Jahmi Burg for her wisdom and her time tonight. Thanks so much, Sandy. And thank you for tuning in. Again, we'll see you next Wednesday at 7:30 for Healing Trauma. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We care about you. We hope that you'll look into joining the SCEA. Now is early enrollment. You can join at no cost until September at jointhescea.org, or you can text the word join to 48744. Again, no better time to join the SCEA than right now, where you can get membership at no cost until September. Again, jointhescea.org.